Dear ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome all of you at the second Tashkent International Investment Forum.
English channel 1 2 3 check. English channel. Так.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Знаете, я взял на себя смелость, посмотрев на часы и увидев, что уже 5 минут после официального начала, попросить наших уважаемых участников панели занять свои места. Я вижу, что там все примерно расселись, и тем, кто пришел, спасибо большое. Очень надеюсь, что эта сессия будет...
First of all, I would like to thank all of you for your participation, and I hope that today's session will be useful for all of you. My name is Konstantin Palunin. I am a moderator of today's session, which is called ESG Business Transformation, and of course we have our international panelists here. I am trying to speak a bit slow for all of to be able to understand me, but still the discussion will be in Russian, and of course we will be jumping into English language also for those who have not catched Uzbek language as yet. I'm a partner of a BCG in Germany, and I came here, and it's my pleasure to participate at this forum and to moderate this session. And of course, the agenda of Boston Consulting Group is in all the countries, and we are supporting private companies, state-owned companies, and of course, we are supporting in business transition. We are in Tashkent for 5 years. We have our office in Uzbekistan, and also I am very happy that ESG agenda is now included in the panel of such important forum. For me, ESG panel started, I guess, several years ago when we have started rehabilitation of various areas from nuclear waste, and these issues have been related to the agenda of environment protection and sustainable environment protection, and it was included in our agenda, and this term became even more popular than digitalization concept. But before we will jump to our speech, let me inform you about participants. Indeed, we have a very reputed panel of experts, and I guess it will be very interesting for all of us. Madam Matilda Zimovska, permanent rep of UNDP to Uzbekistan, Mr. Rashid Pirmatov, chairman of the board of Uzbekistan Metallurgy Combinery, Gabit Musrekov, a partner of KPMG, Charlie Jack, a partner of Hudson Thunder. And we today are well aware how important to have such partners to introduce ESG agenda. Adalat Abdumanapova, the head of programs and projects of IFC in Central Asia, and Malika Sharipova, the chairman of CARE CSR, and I guess it is called corporate social responsibility, and we would like to know also about the differences between ESG and corporate social responsibility a bit later. And availing myself of the rights of moderator, let me also speak about our experience on ESG. I'm still surprised with SDG and ESG agenda, how wide scope and multi-sectoral is this agenda, and it embraces government, companies, civil society, everything, you name it, you have it. And of course, before we will jump to the reports, let me give you ESG environment, social protection, corporate governance. Let me inform you on what is it and why it should be introduced. Why? What for? If we will ask this question, because I have jumped to this question probably 5 years back, I came to know that we have such a day airs of a shoot day, and so this is a day when the humanity uses exhausts all the resources which have been produced by planet Earth. So on 28th of July, we have it globally, on Germany on 4th of May. So it means that we are living now owing to next generation. I have 3 kids, so of course I'm thinking about overconsumption of natural resources, and why ESG became one of the hottest topic of the agenda, because we are having fundamental changes, and we would like to hear our colleagues from various reputed organizations. Of course, changes in environment. Of course, social pressure causes us to change our approaches to regulation. Of course, we have also various changes in investors' behavior also. And of course, if we have 55 degrees centigrade, so that the asphalt also will melt, and of course it means that in the end of this century, indeed, if the global temperature will rise up to 55% degrees centigrade, you know that it will have its dramatic consequences for Middle East countries, and of course it might create also problems for Netherlands. Consider that ice melting will create huge problems for Netherlands, and you know that Netherlands is taking a lot of actions actually to prevent the country from drowning. And of course we have so-called COP15 is, after the Paris agreement on climate, and of course the biodiversity is embraced in the framework of COP15, and of course we are expecting for actions to be taken on environmental and climatic agenda. Of course, it creates various risks and it creates opportunities as well. And for me, money for air, it's a very new model, and Tesla, this company, well known for Elon Musk, its founder, it was getting 20% of its revenue was collected from various other companies which are not complying with the ESG requirements. And of course I can also let you know that this system can create, and so what should we do? And we are doing it. And of course we are trying and we can change. We are working for developing market, and of course COP will be done. And of course this was some sort of topic for global probably some sort of controversy between South and North. And of course we have some global agenda which we are having, and of course we have to know our place in this agenda and in these controversies, also our positions in these controversies. And of course it is very important for us to cope up with this agenda, because 50% of GDP and 86% of world population is concentrated in developed countries. So in 27 years, 60% of global GDP will be produced by developed countries, and of course probably 7 to 15% of global GDP might be underproduced due to these ESG related issues. And of course corporate governance has started not that I would say early. We have embarked on the climate agenda in European countries, in developed countries, only in 2015. Pressure by developing countries put on ESG agenda is also very important. Of course, if we will have some limit, the regulation, I mean regulation which is limiting your production in terms of environmental standards, of course, no one will be buying the goods which you are produced. Therefore, probably the moment I'm coming to the end of my speech, we will be discussing funding, of course, but also what should we do. Of course, having get information with this, and I have also checked this ESG agenda, and I guess that actually Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorite books. So in this book, to stay in your place, you should be always running. This was the quote from this book, and this is the situation where Uzbekistan also, which is also relevant for Uzbekistan at the moment, and you know that ESG will take you 3 years to implement if you are going to start today. And of course, there are 3 aspects which are related to ESG program at the moment. And the first one is licensing to get licensing for your entrepreneur activity, which you have to get from the government. I mean, you have to comply with the standards and requirements. Number 2 is green markets, new products, new prices for new products, and you know there are some products for which you will get at least 70% of additional revenue because it is produced in environmentally responsible manner. So 11% of companies which we have embraced in our survey are complying with the obligations which they have for themselves in coming 5 years. So companies are trying to postpone implementation of these targets and implementation of the respective measures. So what are the important aspects? Dear colleagues, so we are having 10 minutes of time, so upon your kind permission, I would like to give the floor to all of you and also for 10 minutes, and then each of you, of course, will have a time to then for discussions with our audience. Upon your kind permission, give the floor to Madam Matilda Dimovska, because the sustainable development and SDG is the term which was developed by UN, and what are the value of sustainable development and what will be with the agenda of sustainable development in coming future. Please, Madam Dimovska, floor is yours. Dear ladies and gentlemen,
Uzbek yet. So I will switch to English. First, I wish to make a point that having this topic, this session today within the forum is really, I see it as yet another confirmation about the great statements and review that Uzbekistan received during the first session. That is yet another confirmation of the understanding about the importance of linking to the global trends, and contributing to it as a global responsible citizen. So it's great that we are having it. Last time we did not have this type of session, and I look to Malika to confirm. Now, coming from the UN, I start with the first point, the question that you raised. My key point is about the interlinkages, the interrelation between the Sustainable Development Goals and the environment, social and governance principles. They are reinforcing each other. And both of them matter today much more, even more than before. And to everyone, to businesses including. Now, about Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure we are all aware of it, but just say it's the broader global development agenda that was set within the frame of offices of the UN, but it is an agenda of the world, of the countries that have subscribed to it, and if that have committed to a balanced, economically, socially, and environmentally balanced, sustainable development. And if we don't talk about the commitment, then we have in front of us the reality that you have mentioned just now, Konstantin, the pressures and the number of crises, triple crisis that our world and us, we are facing with. So the necessity of balancing and looking for sustainability is we are well aware of. On the other side, the ESGs, and you have already explained it, referring to the company's performance when it comes to its impact to the environment, relation to or how it treats its employers and investors, and of course the overall good governance within the company or operation and within the companies. It is indeed a rating system that measures the credentials of a company against these three criteria. And if it is not internally absorbed, of course, the reasons are very obvious why the companies are looking for it, and why the ESGs are taking much more and more. First, because of such a strong pressure and demand for a global delivering of a global good company performance, or as part of the globally performance. The increasing demand for openness and transparency versus the stakeholders and the employees is there, but also the reality that the financial system is tied, getting increasingly tied to the ESG performance. Now it is mandated, ESG performance is mandated, or good standing is mandated for publicly traded companies, but it may probably not be long for the SMEs that they face when they go to the global markets or engage with the global companies, that they will be asked about the ESG performance. So the point is what used to be nice to have now is must to have for the companies and for the private sector, and therefore the key point that I wanted to make in relation to the sustainable development is that the SDGs and ESG are very much interlinked. They reinforce each other. There is a demand and need for both, and now is the time in Uzbekistan, because I speak from Uzbekistan perspective, to start more broadly implementing it here. Thank you.
Matilda, спасибо.
Matilda,
Dear Madame Dimoska, thank you so much. Upon your kind permission, I will switch to Russian language. And what is the role of UN at the moment in Uzbekistan? How could you assist Uzbekistan in implementation of this agenda? What are tools and programs which you have at your disposal?
Uzbekistan, we talk about a country that is showed so far a strong commitment to SDGs. Yes, it was internalized, the agenda, it was back in 2018. The institutional infrastructure to monitor the progress is there, and to lead the implementation, to come with the data and so on. It is also a very responsible or a country that is committed to transiting to the green economy. We've heard from His Excellency the President in the morning the commitment to the green economy and its principles. Now the question is how that lands, how ESGs are translated into reality, and what is the state of ESG as we see it at the moment. I think that, as in any other country in the world, Uzbekistan is also increasingly seeing a pressure on financial pressure on financing its development needs. Back in 2019, I think, UNDP, we did development finance assessment when we assessed that around $6 billion on an annual basis will be needed if the development needs are to be met. Later, after COVID, IMF estimated that additional 7% of GDP per year would be needed to counteract to the effects of COVID and the disturbances. So what I wanted to make is the point is even the development needs, as in any other country in Uzbekistan, cannot be met without a much stronger engagement also and contribution of the private sector. And here comes the ESGs, and I'm not making the point about the private sector contributing financially to the implementation of the development needs, but on the contrary, partnering and joining the forces, supplementing the public policies when it comes, for example, on climate change, and looking for business opportunities out of the climate action. And as such, as such contribute to implementing the policies, producing a public good interest, meeting the interest of the public, and also being performing profitably. Now, what is the state? At the moment, we do not have a well-regulated environment. It is a fairly new concept, even though we have there have been very strong voices for corporate social responsibility and action so far, but still ESG is fairly seen or relates to the big companies, to state-owned companies at the moment. Sometimes it's seen as impediment to the business requirement for compliance, if you wish so. So therefore, what we in UNDP, we believe it's important to work a bit of a more comprehensively and systematically on building the awareness of what ESG means within the private sector, but also supporting establishment of ESG framework, national framework, to guide the private sector along the national development agenda. Then, of course, developing of a capacity within the private companies. To start with the state-owned enterprises, SOEs, as we say, but not only. We're working also with the SMEs. ESG data and monitoring, of course, is a part of the ecosystem and very much important if one is to measure the progress there. And I did not mention the financing system and financial securities and market system, particularly, which would, of course, require, for which would green taxonomy or ESG reporting framework establishment. I think as UNDP, I will finish here, as UNDP we are also arguing for SDG impact standards globally, which is one step further about its measurement, about the measurement of the impact, not only a performance, but the actual impact to the all aspects of ESG. And that's something also that we believe it's important to do. And of course, we are discussing with a number of partners how to work on all of these aspects. I want to finish by making one point. You know, we have had, as UNDP, we had an experience when we asked the private sector to join us for some public good engagement. And it was such a positive, such an enthusiastic response that we received beyond their business. They joined for a good campaign, for a good for the citizens. The point that I want to make is Uzbek society, in the fabric of this society of this country, is the social solidarity and doing good. And therefore I believe ESG will soon spread more comprehensively here. Thank you.
Матильда, спасибо большое. Коллеги, ну, во-первых, сейчас
Zimowska, thank you so much indeed. You have raised very important issue to the floor, and my colleague from UN indeed has confirmed it to us, and of course everything is okay. You have confirmed it, but the second thing is that if we will join efforts, if we will act together, it will bring a good result. It's very, of course, very relevant message, and of course it looks like we are supporting everything good and we are against everything bad. But you know, it's overall, I mean, it's commonly known things. But, and of course, we need a lot of water, and water should be sufficient for everyone. That is also a very important topic which we are trying to raise to the floor. Also, in the framework of my cooperation with the Italian companies, you know, they are lacking water. And therefore, since they have no water to take from to intake, they are trying to be more environmentally responsible. And of course, talking about ESG, it looks like some sort of mantra. It looks like a system of rules which we obey, and of course this is the probably something which may create a platform for our long life, for happiness, for sustainability. Of course, IFC will be funding, as far as I know, ESG agenda. Tell me, please, are you ready to support the ESG agenda in Uzbekistan? Are you ready to fund it? Well, thank you so much, dear Konstantin, but also please kindly be advised that there are things which you cannot buy for money. Therefore, please kindly be advised that we are happy that today's event is also embracing ESG agenda, and I'm very pleased by the speech of Madame Matilda. She tried to cover and she tried to embrace all these related to the floor, and of course at the moment I'm trying to also comprehend all these issues related to ESG, which are a whole universe, which are some sort of separate universe for all of us. And of course what we have to focus today is that ESG is something which we have to know, and of course we have to keep in mind the opinion of investors. Also, I am the head of ESG projects in Central Asia, in Turkey, for IFC, and of course a lot of our businessmen, including financial organizations, they treat ESG as some sort of separate components. They are talking that we trying to, for example, plant trees, and we are focused on ESG, and that we can have, I guess, some other goals put for ourselves for the future, but we should not be focused only with planting trees. We should be advised that we are having three key pillars. Number one is risks. Risks is operational risks and reputational risks. And of course, when our experts of EN officer is those who are on the risk management team, those officers, and of course talking about ESG risks, you should be also advised that these are investment risks. And CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, you know that he is compiling some sort of open letter for CEOs all over the world, and several of his recent letters, these open letters, are related to climate change. They are focused on ESG, and he recently is focused that business should not be only concentrated on making money, but also that it should be more responsible in terms of climate agenda, environmental agenda, for us to live healthier and happier life in future. And of course we have our ESG not because we are environment specialists, but because ESG is posing investment risks for all of us. And my team of risk managers are assessing these risks, and my team of analysis, they are compiling information. And Madame Dimovska was absolutely right to mention that data collection is very important for us, and of course embracing this data, especially in European Union, becomes one of the most important requirements. And at the moment we should be kept in mind what is the influence of climate change, of environmental change, and how we are assessing those risks. This is also very important. And the second thing is impact. This as a business, so we have to look to the other side, how we are impacting society and, of course, the environment, how we are, tracing out our carbon footprint, how we are measuring it. And, of course, in talking about environmental and social risks, as organizations, we are emitting carbon dioxide and other hazardous substances to the environment, and we should cooperate with each of our employees also to be more environmentally responsible. And third component, which substantially distinguishes ESG from other concepts, is opportunities for businesses. Having these ESG practices, we are and put in place, we are trying to find the areas where we can introduce new products and how this ESG concept can be introduced in our business concept. So we should be working on this together with business community. Of course, we have a lot of opportunities, starting from capital market and to green bonds, social, gender issues, and products related to probably green. Would it be e-vehicles? Would it be various green banking products? And in Uzbekistan, we know that green vehicles are booming at the moment as a domain. And of course, we have to have this helicopter view and strategic approach, which Madam Dimovska also mentioned in her speech. And of course, in the countries where we are working, we have some initiatives in place, but they are they are not based on holistic approach, and of course they are not comprehensive. Therefore, we have to keep in mind, for example, if we have a lot of vehicles, e-vehicles, the key issue is that how do you charge them? If these e-vehicles are charged from thermal power plant, it means that you are burning more coal or more gas to produce this energy. So that is the issue. You have to have a strategy to transit to carbon neutrality, to green economy, and it is very important, and the government has to focus its attention on this. And answering to your question, dear moderator, of course, business has its own task and the government has its own purposes and visions, but they should not be apart from each other. And talking about our region, I guess that talking about businesses and financial sector, of course, this ESG agenda is not that far away from what we are putting in place in other countries of the region. And let me mention one initiative of Agency of Financial Supervision and Control of Kazakhstan, and their initiative was their commitment to promote ESG principles in financial sector. And our team, together with the teams of the World Bank and EBRD, we are cooperating with this Kazakhstan agency, and me and my team are working on developing two documents. Number one is guidelines on ESG documentation disclosure, and number two is guideline on introducing ESG risks for banking and financial sector. So it means that banks and other financial institutions should disclose information and ESG reports or reports on sustainable development and introduce the systems on assessment of environmental and social risks. Indeed, it is not just it's not about nice to have it. It's about must have it, must do. So this is the approach by Kazakhstan. I mean, this year it should be voluntary for 2022-2023, and starting from 2024, it will be mandatory for all of us. And of course, we should keep in mind that the financial sector is not performing a part and aside from all the other sectors of the economy, which means that other sectors of economy will be following financial sector in terms of introducing ESG and ESG reports. And of course, discussing about environmental and social risks, of course, we are awaiting from both large companies and small and medium-sized businesses that they will in future compile with these ESG requirements. In Kyrgyzstan, we're also working on these, I would say, standards, and of course, they will also approve in coming future the guidelines on ESG information disclosure. We are cooperating with the banks, and we are developing the roadmap on developing sustainable finances. So we are trying to shift the focus from the words and declarations to practical steps on implementation. Let me stop here, Konstantin. You know, I can talk about this forever long, so let me stop here. Yes, Madam, you and me and Madam Matilda, we cannot stay here forever and discuss this ESG topic because it is very comprehensive, and I mean, we can talk within a week even, and it will not be covered up as yet. And of course, indeed, we have to have holistic approach. We need to have a clear idea about probably some figures to portray this ESG importance and significance of these topics. So, you know, companies which are leaders in ESG agenda, they are attracting additionally 0.6 percentage points of funds comparing to the companies which are non-compliant to ESG. And of course, we should also mention that if you are not having any ESG rating, you will not be able to attract funds, and of course it will be limiting you, because you know investors are thinking that your company is high risk company, and you know this is the rule of behavior for the business, rule of conduct, code of conduct, I would say. Therefore, the money which you are attracting, if you are not compliant to ESG, is much less comparing to what people are comparing. And by 2030 in ESG, at least 10 trillion of USD will be available for green finances, for green funding a year. 10 trillion of USD. You know that such a huge amount of fund will help us to have a lot of money to be invested in the ESG. And of course, it is very important. And ESG funds at developing markets are growing 50% a year, and in developing countries the growth rate totals 25% a year. So it's very important for economy, for GDP, and of course you can have a clear idea that investments in green transparent companies becomes more and more important as time goes by. And here we have our such investment circles representatives, it will give you even more statistical figures to understand you and to have a clearer vision on what are the benefits. But anyway, from what we should start? What should be our starting point? Which data we can trust on ESG and which data we shouldn't trust? As an investor, you mean? Yes, you mean from the position of investor. Well, Konstantin, let me also probably add some information and that international financial institutions and international developmental institutions that IFC, starting from 2023, will be investing only in case in 85 new projects that only if they compile with ESG requirements. It's not just an incentive, you mean? It is a requirement. It is something mandatory, and the same requirements will be put by EBRD, by ADB, and it calls you for taking actions, not just for thinking over. And of course, you're absolutely right, it's must-have. I haven't answered your question from what we should start. From what should we start? It's a very good question, because these three letters, ESG, are, sometimes confusing you. And from what should we start? We have been discussed it. That we should start with G letter from governance, because if there will be no top-down approach, it might not be successful. Sometimes, especially sometimes officers are coming with the initiative, but of course it is not efficient. Therefore, it should be on board, it should come from the supervisory boards, and of course, if the corporate governance system is there to integrate understanding, and the key purpose is to change the corporate governance, and therefore, of course, it is very important to integrate it into corporate culture. Yes, we are diverting, because we are so attracted to these topics, so that we are now indeed diverting from our agenda. So, Mr. Gabit, you're representative of a consulting company. So, as a representative of KPMG, can you please tell me how can these ESG trends of each how fast they will appear in the agenda of each CEO in your country? Well, you're absolutely right talking about Uzbekistan. Indeed, ESG agenda is here for a certain period of time. It started from the period of ratification in 2018, and actually
тех тенденций, которые сейчас есть, я думаю, что в ближайших...
And of course, in these coming 1 or 2 years, probably all of the CEOs of this country will be engaged in this agenda of ESG. And of course, if we are talking about the agenda, sometimes it looks too comprehensive, and sometimes you will not be able to even understand it, because you're talking about environment, you're talking about corporate governance, and it has a lot of terms, definitions, and topics which are included in each of these letters. But look at this: if you're having this helicopter view, sometimes you will get scared, because there are a lot of details which you have to dive in. And of course, as my colleagues have already mentioned, we have to be more, I would guess, focused on fundamental things, on basics and all this. Then we can dive in to trends and details. So at the moment, corporate governance is becoming more and more relevant, and several years ago in Uzbekistan we had a corporate governance code which was approved, and several companies in Uzbekistan were proactively introducing this particular domain from point of governance, and they are trying to get some results on improving efficiency. And talking about environment and social issues, of course, we are having several items introduced from the point of regulation. And of course, we are having so-called net zero indicator and carbon neutrality by 2050, and we are having information about discussion on introduction of transition to green economy in Uzbekistan, and also we are having information on introduction of other regulatory requirements to the government, which will help us to reach carbon neutrality. But also having the experience which we have had from, I guess, at least I would like to recommend both to businesses and the government to be more, I would say, prudent while introducing these regulatory requirements, because in most of the former Soviet Union countries, government was introducing various laws and legislations far ahead of the market maturity. And by 2050, of course, we have to keep in mind that for carbon neutrality you will be investing heavily by 2050, but you should also keep in mind that it should be efficient and bring fruits from the points of view of businesses. Therefore, these legal updates in legislation, it should be on the same pace as business development. Thank you so much. And I felt that, initially I was thinking that before, from the Alice of Wonderland, from this book, quoting, you should know to reach to your point, you should run as soon as fast as you can. But now, from your speech, it looks like you are saying if you will be running too fast, you may fall down and everyone will be laughing at you. Therefore, it means that you are calling us to slow down. It looks like you are calling us to slow down. Do you have some, I would say, examples if government regulation is going far ahead the business opportunities, that it might create some negative impact on business development? Yes, you're absolutely right. We should, be in the middle, I would say, because our target of carbon neutrality by 2050, but now we have 25 years to go practically. So we're thinking, 27 years is a quite long period of time, and of course it will be long enough for us to have carbon neutrality. But if we are talking about, I would say, a certain target, which is very, I would say, even majestic, and we, from this very huge target, if we will go down to business, to some small and practical approaches, of course we have to keep in mind that for us to do, for each of these small businesses, or for large businesses even, to have this carbon neutrality by 2050, they will have to conduct an analysis. Roughly, it will take them a year. Then they will have to develop certain projects roughly it might take also a year. They will have to find a lot of money, billions of dollars, or to modernize the equipment, existing equipment, or to buy new equipment and install and operate it, and have a new production cycle in place. So I guess Mr. Pirmatov will also confirm my words that it will not 2 or 3 years, it will take tens of years, it will take decades, I would say. And from some regulatory requirements point of view, in Kazakhstan, in my country, we have announced 2060 carbon neutrality. We had a doctrine, we had legislation in place introduced, and we have started from major companies. We have been putting some requirements to them from the point of view of modernization of equipment, of statistics. But when the business companies are coming to us to get our consultancy on this, how can we meet these targets and requirements? The key issue which they come across is that we have to invest 20 or 30 billions of USD to have new infrastructure in place, to have a new equipment in place. Would it be cheaper for us? Why won't we rather simply to probably perform the way we did by a certain period of time and then close our business and leave the market? Why not? Because it is easier for us to pay penalty rather to be environmentally efficient. Yes, you are calling us for such a discussion. Should we sell our businesses? Should we close our businesses? Or should we convert and transform our businesses to net zero? Well, probably by 2050, by 2080, who knows what purposes we will reach. It looks like we are coming to scope 1, to scope 2, then to scope 3. So it looks like we're trying to, narrow down our focus. So from the point of view of interaction of businesses and government, I had a very good mentor, friend, and colleague who was using some sort of analysis. If you are having the purpose to reach the moon, it doesn't mean that by 2050, it doesn't mean that in 1 year you will have to rise up 1 kilometer above planet Earth. Therefore, we have to change the logics of business from the point of view where you will get enough of money to construct, I would say, some space shuttles and the launch pads, and only from this point of view you will reach the moon if the moon is your target. This would be some sort of analogy which I would like to draw to you, some sort of example to portray this. So the requirements should be synchronized, I guess. Therefore, you have to have a clear idea on this. And now let us move forward, and I'm looking now at Ms. Malika, who is from KRCCR. Please, madam, corporate social responsibility. So, madam, we have been discussing about environment, about climate, about corporate governance, from which we should start. So, I would like to give the floor to you because everyone was asking it from me, and now I would like to address this question to you. What is the difference from corporate social responsibility and from ESG? Corporate social responsibility, from my point of view, is when company is contracting a kindergarten or a school in a certain area where people reside, or improving infrastructure by the funds which have been invested by the business. But ESG is something, unembraceable. What do you think?
That's a really good question, and I get this question all the time. What's the difference between CSR and ESG? CSR is more, we can say it's more voluntary initiatives of the businesses. It's when businesses are trying to be responsible and recognizing their actually impact on the society or the environment. But I always, as you said, people think it's kind of a one-time charity or donations or something like this, but it's not charity. It's not one-time move. CSR should be like long-term strategy of the company. Companies, they should try to solve certain societal or environmental issue within the community that they are operating in. That is CSR, but CSR is more voluntary, as I said. But whereas ESG, it's quantifiable, like it's measurable. And as Adalat already said, it's more for investors, because investors, when they're trying to evaluate some company, they're looking into their ESG metrics, ESG information, and that's how they decide, well, if they're socially responsible investors, I would point out, because not many investors, unfortunately, there are some investors that are not looking into ESG or responsibility. So we're talking about only SRIs, socially responsible investors. So this is mainly the difference between CSR and ESG. Otherwise, they're like brotherly or sisterly concepts. So it's all about responsibility of the companies. But we can see that in Uzbekistan, both concepts, actually, CSR and ESG, have been evolving. But I can say that it's still a new concept in Uzbekistan, especially ESG.
Спасибо большое. Я думаю, вы сейчас как бы четко поставили все на место. CSR — это такое плавание вольным стилем, куда хочешь, туда и плыви. А ESG — это...
Yes, thank you very much. As I understand from what you were saying, that CSR is more voluntary based, and the ESG is more comprehensive and complicated and measurable with the metrics for investors. And I see it's a very good definition. Thank you very much. What major factors do you see for ESG in Uzbekistan?
As I said, you know, CSR and ESG has been evolving in Uzbekistan, but like if we look into the 5 years ago, businesses were kind of reluctant, you know, to implement responsible practice in their operations. But we see that Uzbekistan is opening up to the world, right? And then not only businesses, I can see that growing interest not only from businesses but also from the government, which is really you know, plausible, and also from the regulators as well. But if we talk about drivers, I can talk from my own experience, seeing that well, as Matilda said, ESG now, she said it's more for big companies, but maybe then small SMEs will be involved as well. It's already happening. So yeah, in terms of how it's happening, well, let's say a local company, if they want to work with some Western companies, those Western companies, of course, they care about their supply chain responsibility. They have to make sure that their supply chain is clean as well. So that's why they start demanding certain international audit certifications, and those audits and certifications are based on ESG and CSR principles. So if they want to work with Western companies, they must implement all those you know, principles in their operations. That's how I see. Although we have companies who started doing it voluntarily. For example, I can talk about Uzprom-Stroybank. It's one of the largest banks in Uzbekistan. And as far as I know, they released first ever country's green bonds in 2021, if I'm not wrong. And these bonds were aimed at you know, financing projects directed to renewable energies, energy efficiency projects, and etc. Another driver, I could say, it's changing environment, regulatory environment in Uzbekistan. As I said, government is also understanding the importance of ESG and the advantages and benefits of ESG. And of course, number of laws and regulations were adopted, such as, for example, law on environmental protection, or we have a law on energy saving and energy efficiency. We have national sustainable development strategy, and etc. I won't be counting all of them, but these provide kind of a environment or support and urges businesses to, you know, to practice the responsible business practice, let's say. And also all those laws and regulations, they provide certain tax incentives and also subsidies for those companies who want to implement some green operations as well. Also, I have to point out the importance of international organizations in Uzbekistan who are trying to develop and promote ESG among businesses. I can talk about companies that I work and also companies that I know. For example, Amfori. Amfori is one of the biggest business associations in Europe, and what they are trying to do in Uzbekistan, they're helping local businesses, mostly it's textile businesses who want to, integrate those ESG practices in their operations. They're helping them, they're guiding them, they're showing them how they can actually practice their social and environmental responsibilities. And being a service provider, like here CSR is a service provider for Amfori, we conducted capacity buildings for over 120 companies, and about 20 of them, they already obtained those international certificates and audits, and they already started working with reputable international brands, which is, good. And then we have to talk about BCI, Better Cotton Initiative, maybe you know as well. They're working with local farmers, and they're trying to show them the sustainable agricultural practice, but not only, they're also helping them to implement decent work practices. And I'm the decent work auditor for BCI, and I can say that I saw companies changing throughout the year. They implemented those ESG and CSR principles in their operations. They, eliminated child labor or any labor-related issues, living wages. They started to provide living wages, improve their occupational health and safety, and etc. So you can see the improvement in there as well. And of course, I have to admit that UNDP is doing a great work in Uzbekistan. I worked on green growth strategies framework with Matilda. It's a really awesome, actually, strategy because it not only focuses on the environmental side, it also focuses on the social, elements that should be developed in Uzbekistan. Also, of course, it's EBRD, it's ADB, it's IFC. All of them, they're trying to support businesses in Uzbekistan if they want to become on the path of sustainability and responsibility. Thank you.
Малика, спасибо большое.
Malika, thank you very much. Frankly speaking, it's a very interesting topic for us because we were talking about the corporate governance and the rules and the ecology and climate. So we discussed a lot of things, including the social sphere. And if people who live and work in regions and in this company, the people are healthy, they are happy, then it is actually the consequence, and also they're involved in the company. It is already saying that ESG is working. And that is why the letter S, it is more and more central, and actually it is the most important thing. Of course, ecology, climate, financing, money, projects, but S is the most important. It is taking the huge amount of time. It's also about the change of the culture. And I would like to say some examples from numbers. There are some numbers about the developing and development countries. Non-formal employability in the developing countries is more than 50%, And in the developed countries, 20%. It means that people do not want to take people for the temporary work, to paying social taxes, etc. So it means that every second other person is working illegally, which means that he is already isolated from some taxes, and etc. So I am not talking, even not talking about the gender equality, diversity, and etc. So it's still very far, far away from here, but still about the non-legality. So that there is a joke that the trends are coming, like the fashion trends, I mean, are coming so quickly. Like last week it's in Milan, and here like the next season. But with the technologies, and it's after the 2-3 years. But the social trends are coming within 10 to 15 years. Can you imagine? 10, 15 years. So the social trend with the letter S, it is coming for a very long time. Why? Because it's all about changing the mindset. And it's so difficult to change the mindset, to change the culture. And that's why there is a specific behind it, like it's a context. So S in Germany will not be the same as in Uzbekistan, of course, or in Myanmar, or in Mongolia, or Japan. So there is a specifics behind it, and it is becoming more and more comprehensive and complicated because you need to take into consideration the context of this country. And for the multinational countries, for multidimensional countries, and I am the representative of the international company, and we have branches around the world, and it is a really challenge for us. Because what is this right and what it is social norms in Europe, in US, it is not the same as in Eastern Asia, let's say, because it is different standards, different, and so it's all about scalability of the practices of ESG for the multinational, multidimensional companies. We need to take into consideration the local context and standards. So thank you very much, Malika. I think we will still have like some time to discuss furthermore. The next person who I want to discuss, Charlie Deck from the Hudson Harla Company. So,
Communication. This is not sufficient to do good things. This is probably more important to communicate in the right way about good things. So, how to do it in the right way? Can you switch on?
There we go. Thank you. Well, you've heard a lot from the panelists today and this morning about the importance of ESG, of doing the right thing for the planet, doing the right thing for the people, doing companies operating properly, maintaining your social license to operate. But I want to put this in a performance context. And in a financial context, and through the lens of an investment forum, this investment forum. And my apologies if my messages are quite basic, and many of you, I'm sure, have advanced ESG understanding. But I want to bring it back to some fundamentals. Firstly, for us all to accept that there is increasing acceptance that strong ESG, from a company perspective, translates into strong performance. Operational performance, financial performance. I think Bain produced a study only this week that surveyed 100,000 private companies, and they saw a positive correlation between ESG efforts and financial performance. Now, the one thing investors are focused on is good performance, okay? So, ESG is vital for this audience, and we've heard about it. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. But in an investment context, let's be very clear, it is critical to remain investable today and remain investable tomorrow. And I think back to my career, and I know Uzbekistan boasts many young generation, from the young generation. I was working in 1997. I started work in 1997. And in 1997, the internet was coming into the UK, 1996, 97, and businesses were starting to transform. And in our world, when we're a communications consultancy advising on ESG, investor relations, public relations, by 2000, if we weren't internet enabled, like many, many other businesses and consultancies, and I looked at KPMG and others, if you weren't internet enabled, you weren't a business. And from an investment perspective, you wouldn't invest in a business that didn't have internet managed processes and systems. You'd look to the next company and the next peer. That, I think, is the parallel and the paradigm shift that we've experienced with ESG over the last 5 years. So investors are looking, so it's not just the consultants of this world looking at this. Investors are looking at it, and they're looking at it from a performance basis. Ernst & Young, I think, produced a survey saying that 91% of investors are using ESG criteria as part of their investment decisions. The inflows, with some of these metrics have come out, Constantine mentioned them, the inflows of ESG-linked money into the global debt and equity markets has gone that. ESG inflows into European ETFs, 249 billion. That's 18% of total ETF capital. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is, so they're looking at it from performance, they're recognizing that there's good performance, but why also are investors having to do this? Well, because they've signed up to codes like the UN PRI, the Principles of Responsible Investing. So I think there is $120 trillion of assets under management from fund managers who are now committed to these principles. So be under no illusion that if you're not addressing and disclosing in the manner that these fund managers and these investors want, your access to capital will be reduced, equity capital, and your cost of debt capital will increase. And I think to complete that circle, they are also, you must understand about investors, is they are not just seeing better performance as a result of it, not just moving to ESG investing as a result of their own commitments, but they're being forced to by their own investors, the institutions, the pension funds, even the millennials on the street. They want to hand their money to money managers who are going to invest responsibly. So, you know, the fundamental point is the capital is there, it's ESG framed, and we all have to accept that.
Thank you very much. Still, and I think we all realize that if capital wants to be green, then ultimately you have to be green, otherwise you can't develop your business, or you have to search for other sources of money. The question is, communicating on your ESG performance from companies. I mean, we all read newspapers and news and all of that. What can go wrong if company starts communicating its ESG targets and performance and, you know, issue fancy annual reports, etc.?
Well, I think that my background is advising companies in the metals and mining industry, which are carbon intensive, and they have sat on the naughty step in terms of the corporate world for some time. So many actually of the metals and mining businesses we've been advising have been some of the most aggressive in implementing responsible ESG strategies and disclosing those to their investors because they had to. They were in carbon intensive businesses which faced ESG pressures operationally on multiple fronts. So what we see with good practice companies is first an acceptance by the management that you're going to be asked every time on ESG. Every meeting with serious investors, issues are going to come up and they're going to want to understand your development, your pathway, your progress, your priorities and your commitments. They need to get comfortable with it. So first thing is expect to talk about it. It's there, it's a part of life. An additional point is, and we've talked about this and this has been highlighted very well by the panelists, is a solid strategy. And it's a strategy for both public companies, for private companies, for state-owned companies. And I think the important thing is that that strategy is tailored for your stage and development of a company, and that you're not expected to conquer significant environmental challenges overnight, but you're there to show a journey and a pathway and progress against that pathway, evaluating where your priority material topics are that you're going to address and manage over time. So it's a strategy for your size and scale, and picking your ESG areas that you're going to focus on, report on, disclose on, and being consistent with that, demonstrating your intent and demonstrating your transparency with good materials. The final point I would just say, and it comes back to what we've talked about,
we talked about ESG versus GSE. And I, from an investment point of view, I can't overstate this enough. There is a graveyard of emerging market companies and associated countries that have failed on the international capital markets. It takes a lifetime to build a reputation up, and it takes one ill-judged governance breach to destroy it. And it can take decades for that company and that region to recover from it. So independent boards, strong independent directors, protecting the rights of minority shareholders are vital, and international investors will look closely to that. In London, we say you're measured by the company you keep. So focus on the independence of your board and what they bring to your company.
Спасибо большое. Вот мы снова вернулись к теме независимость борда и начинаем с...
Indeed, you're absolutely right, and this issue
just in Uzbekistan, but in Central Asia as the whole, and we have a lot of satellites productions who are developing on our bases, and not only in Uzbekistan but also in neighboring countries, we are producing meaningful contribution in to development of steel and construction industry, and we are planning to double our production by 2024, by next year. So we are having very ambitious agenda of constructing steel works next year, and we have Renaissance company from Turkey and Danieli company from Italy who are our partners and who are contributing in implementing this project of doubling our production capacity by next year. And of course, corporate governance, social responsibility, environment protection, all of them are embraced in this project. And of course, we are going to comply with the requirements which we have been discussing in the framework of today's panel session. Therefore, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that several years ago, these terms of ESG has not been known to our colleagues and counterparts, but 14 years ago we have implemented a project on gas treatment facility, and this, you know that industrial companies are emitting pollutions, especially, you know, we are emitting a lot of gases, hazardous gases, and we had 80 grams of per cubic meters. It was a dust, and of course we have very heavy and intense winds, and of course it was causing a lot of issues for us and for the people in neighboring areas. Therefore, of course, we have managed to reduce pollutions emissions to 12.
we have attracted international consultant who has visited our production facilities and shops to collect the data, and at the moment we are developing a long-term strategy of ESG. It reached its final stage, and hopefully by the end of the year we will get the results, the tangible results on ESG introduction. We are also working on our efficiency together with EBRD, and together with EBRD we have launched a project on audit of resource efficiency of our company, engaging international consultant, and also we have arranged a visit of experts to study current status of the situation. We have developed a report based on the data collected, and we are planning to attract various international organizations for our future joint efforts. Of course, we are working on power efficiency, and we have ISO 50000/1, and we are also planning to introduce 14001, and also we have introduced a new standard on environment protection, on health, environment, and safety. So you can see that as we learn on ESG, all of these issues are embraced, and all of of these issues are becoming cross-functional. Therefore, these standards and the ESG agenda will give us more comprehensive understanding on the way to develop business and attract foreign investment, because by 2026 we have a task to increase our production capacity by 2026 up to 2.5 million of tons a year. At the moment, we produce 1.1 million of tons. So, you know, the agenda is very ambitious ahead of us. So, indeed, at the moment, development, and we are having negotiations with international consultants to engage them on tender basis to get the first international ESG ranking. And last year, September, Fitch Ratings in the history of our factory for the first time has given us B minus rank, and we are working on getting ESG ranking as well. And at the moment, in the framework of our discussions, we have been discussing about engaging in our package to engage corporate governance, and of course we should keep in mind that we should engage various foreign experts and international consultant, independent consultant in our supervisory board. And of course, our combinary for the first time in Uzbekistan was the one that was the first to introduce so-called investor calls. And in the framework of these investment calls, we are informing about our financial results, and we are sharing what we have achieved and giving answers to the questions raised by investors. And we are planning to have these investor calls. The practice will be proceeded in order to boost the awareness about the activities of our factory. And of course, we have a lot of topics to accomplish together with our international consultants. And I'm pretty sure, as you have mentioned, that within a certain period of time we will be able to get a pretty good results in these area, and we will be developing even more intensively in this extent. Thank you so much, Mr. Permatov. Indeed, very impressive speech. And we, as experts here, are talking about what should be done, when should be done, and we are having just words and discussion. But you are taking actions. You are going and doing, you know. And we would like to wish you success, because you are acting instead of talking. Several times you have mentioned the word data, reality, statistics. You have been giving us a lot of figures, and international consultants, most of them, I am not talking about everyone, but I am talking about your practice, because you're giving actual figures, and it shows that you have been taking a serious efforts, and you have been cooperating with all of your colleagues, officers, and etc. And I am very happy that in the framework of your forthcoming works, in the framework of ESG rating, you will be taking following actions, and I'm very happy. And of course, a lot of companies are working on this. They are not stopping. And my dear colleagues, at the moment, I am, you know, as a moderator, sometimes I would say that I'm at the like as a hostage, because I would like to proceed with these discussions, but still we are running short out of time.
But it's already time for Q&A session, because it's the time is running out. So first of all, I would like to say thank you very much for our panelists. Thank you very much for discussion. I think it was very interesting, and we also found new things about each other as well. So dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please ask. I would like to say to all of you good luck, and I hope that this kind of session, which will be like creating more awareness around the ESG, I hope it will be more in other forums. Thank you very much.